Eagles Nation. The Philadelphia Eagles may be heading toward one of the most fascinating decisions of the offseason, and it involves two of the biggest names connected to the future of the franchise, Max Crosby and Jalen Carter. Over the last several years, one thing has remained consistent in Philadelphia. The organization has always placed a massive emphasis on building a dominant pass rush. It is part of the team's identity, and it is a philosophy that has followed the franchise through multiple eras. Whether it was investing heavily in defensive linemen through the draft, signing proven veterans, or making aggressive trades, the Eagles have repeatedly shown that they believe games are won by controlling the line of scrimmage and disrupting opposing quarterbacks. That philosophy is exactly why the latest reports surrounding Max Crosby have created so much discussion among Eagles fans. According to reports referenced in the discussion, the Eagles' interest in Crosby is described as enormous, with Philadelphia reportedly being one of the hottest potential destinations connected to the star pass rusher. When you examine the way Howie Roseman has built this roster over the years, the connection begins to make sense. The Eagles have consistently invested premium resources into their defensive front. From Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox to Javon Hargrave, Hassan Reddick, Jordan Davis, Nolan Smith, and Jalen Carter, the organization has never been shy about adding talent where it believes games can be controlled. The blueprint has been clear for years. Find the quarterback, protect the quarterback, and attack the opposing quarterback. That formula reached its peak during the Eagles' dominant Super Bowl victory over Kansas City, where the defensive front completely overwhelmed Patrick Mahomes. The pass rush generated constant pressure, recorded multiple sacks, and forced critical mistakes. It served as a reminder that elite defensive line play can completely change the outcome of the biggest games. Now imagine adding Max Crosby to a unit that already contains significant talent. The Eagles currently possess one of the most intriguing defensive fronts in football. Jalen Carter remains one of the most physically gifted defensive tackles in the league. Jordan Davis continues to be a major presence inside. Moro Ojomo has emerged as another valuable piece. On the edge, Philadelphia has Jonathan Greenard, Jalix Hunt, Nolan Smith, Arnold Ebiketie, AJ Epinesa, and several developmental players competing for roles. That group is already strong. The argument for Crosby is not that Philadelphia lacks pass rushers. The argument is that Crosby could elevate a very good unit into a truly elite one. His production, consistency, and relentless playing style have made him one of the NFL's most respected defenders. He impacts both the passing game and the running game, and his motor has become one of his defining characteristics. Every snap is played with intensity, and that attitude has earned him respect throughout the league. What makes the situation even more interesting is how well Crosby's mentality appears to align with Philadelphia's football culture. The city has always embraced players who play with toughness, energy, and visible passion. Crosby's reputation as a relentless competitor fits that mold perfectly. The Eagles' defense could already be one of the best units in football entering the upcoming season. The secondary features exciting young talent, and the defensive line remains one of the deepest groups on the roster. Adding a player of Crosby's caliber would not simply improve the defense, it could potentially transform it into one of the most feared units in the entire NFL. But every major acquisition comes with a price, and that is where the conversation becomes significantly more complicated. Several trade scenarios have been discussed, and many of them involve Jalen Carter. That alone is enough to create debate among Eagles fans. Carter has shown flashes of dominance since arriving in Philadelphia. At his best, he is capable of taking over games and creating chaos for opposing offenses. Players with that kind of talent are extremely difficult to find. However, the reality of the NFL salary cap means that difficult decisions eventually arrive for every franchise. The Eagles have built a roster loaded with young talent. Future extensions for key players will demand major financial commitments. The organization must constantly evaluate which players can be retained long-term and which decisions provide the greatest value for the future. That reality brings us to another major development involving Carter himself. According to NFL insider Albert Breer, the Eagles have shown hesitation when it comes to giving Carter a massive new contract right now. That report immediately raised questions because Philadelphia has often been aggressive when extending its core players before their market value rises even higher. The hesitation does not necessarily mean the Eagles do not value Carter. In fact, their actions in previous situations suggest the opposite. Carter has reportedly not been included in several major trade discussions involving star players in the past, which indicates the organization views him as a cornerstone piece. Still, there are factors that could be influencing the timing. Carter is coming off a season season that included injury concerns, and his next contract could exceed $30 million per year. A commitment of that magnitude requires complete confidence that the player will remain healthy, productive, and capable of leading the defense for years to come. Philadelphia's front office has built its reputation on making calculated decisions. They are aggressive when necessary, but they also understand the risks associated with massive long-term investments. The question is whether the organization eventually decides that Carter is worth that commitment, or whether the possibility of acquiring a proven superstar like Max Crosby changes the equation entirely. As the speculation continues to build, Eagles fans are left wondering what direction the franchise will ultimately choose. Should Philadelphia continue building around Jalen Carter as one of the centerpieces of the defense? Or should the team seriously consider a blockbuster move for Max Crosby if the opportunity becomes available? The financial side of this situation is what makes the entire discussion so fascinating, because the Eagles are not dealing with a simple decision. They are trying to balance the present with the future while keeping a championship caliber roster together. When you look at the players already on the roster, it becomes clear why every dollar matters. Philadelphia has invested heavily in maintaining one of the strongest cores in the NFL. Several young stars are expected to become extension candidates in the coming years, and those future contracts will not come cheap. That is why the reported hesitation surrounding Jalen Carter has become such a major talking point. The Eagles have often rewarded their homegrown talent before they reach the open market. It has been one of the organization's most successful strategies. By extending players early, they frequently avoid paying even higher prices later. So when a player as talented as Carter remains without a new deal, people naturally begin asking questions. The report suggests that Philadelphia may simply want more information before making a massive commitment. Carter dealt with injury concerns, including shoulder issues, and the organization may want to see how he responds moving forward before committing to what could become one of the largest contracts ever given to a defensive tackle. From a business perspective, that approach makes sense. A contract exceeding $30 million annually is not something a front office hands out casually. It affects roster construction for years. Every major extension creates ripple effects throughout the entire organization, yet there is another side to the argument. Elite defensive tackles are among the rarest assets in football. When Jalen Carter is playing at his highest level, he becomes the type of player offenses must account for on every snap. Offensive coordinators build game plans around stopping players like him. Offensive linemen require help. Protection schemes change. Running lanes disappear. Quarterbacks become uncomfortable. Those players do not grow on trees. That is why many Eagles fans believe the organization should simply pay Carter and move forward. Finding another player with his upside would be incredibly difficult, and Philadelphia already knows what kind of impact he can have when healthy and fully locked in. At the same time, Max Crosby represents a different type of certainty. Unlike a younger player who is still projecting future growth, Crosby has already established himself as one of the NFL's premier defenders. His production has been consistent. His effort level is unquestioned. His leadership qualities have earned praise throughout the league. Every season he proves that he can be the centerpiece of a defensive front. That creates an intriguing debate. Would you rather invest heavily in a younger player whose best football may still be ahead of him, or acquire a proven superstar who has already demonstrated elite production year after year? The Eagles may eventually be forced to answer exactly that question. Some of the proposed trade concepts involve Philadelphia sending significant assets to Las Vegas, including Carter in certain scenarios. Those ideas are controversial, but they highlight just how valuable both players are viewed around the league. For the Raiders, acquiring a young defensive tackle with Carter's talent could provide a cornerstone for their future. For the Eagles, acquiring Crosby would provide an immediate impact player capable of helping a championship contender right away. Neither side would make such a move lightly. What makes the entire situation even more interesting is that the Eagles have repeatedly shown through their actions that they value Carter highly. Despite various rumors and trade discussions involving star defenders over the last few years, Carter has remained in Philadelphia. That speaks volumes about how the organization views him internally. The front office understands that truly dominant defensive linemen can change games on their own. Carter has shown flashes of being exactly that type of player. At the same time, Howie Roseman has never been afraid to make bold moves if he believes they improve the team's chances of competing for championships. His history is filled with aggressive decisions that many people initially questioned before they ultimately paid off. That is why this story continues to generate so much attention among Eagles fans. On one side, you have a young defensive star who could become the long-term face of the defensive line for the next decade. On the other side, you have one of the NFL's most accomplished pass rushers potentially becoming available and reportedly generating enormous interest from Philadelphia. The Eagles do not need to make a decision today, but eventually a choice will have to be made. Whether that choice involves extending Jalen Carter, pursuing Max Crosby, or finding another path entirely, the outcome could shape the future of Philadelphia's defense for years to come. For now, all eyes remain on Howie Roseman and the Eagles front office as they evaluate every possible scenario. The roster is already talented enough to compete for another championship, but Philadelphia has never been an organization satisfied with being merely good enough. The goal is always to be the best, and that mindset is exactly why these conversations are taking place behind the scenes. If the Eagles ultimately have the opportunity to acquire Max Crosby while managing the future of Jalen Carter, it could become one of the biggest franchise-defining decisions of this era. The stakes are enormous, the implications are long-term, and Eagles fans will be watching every development closely. One of the most important details in this entire discussion is that the Eagles are not operating from a position of desperation. This is not a franchise searching for answers. This is a franchise trying to determine how to remain at the top of the NFC for years to come. That distinction matters. Teams that are rebuilding often make decisions based solely on future potential. Teams that are contending for championships have to evaluate every move through a different lens. The question is not simply whether a player is talented. The question becomes whether that player helps maximize a championship window. Philadelphia's current roster places them firmly in that category. The defense already possesses high-end talent at multiple levels. The defensive front remains one of the strengths of the team. The secondary continues to develop into one of the most exciting groups in football. The coaching staff believes this unit can reach another level, especially under Vic Fangio's leadership. That is why the idea of adding a player like Max Crosby continues to generate excitement. Imagine opposing offenses trying to prepare for a defense that already creates pressure consistently and then adding one of the most relentless edge defenders in football. Offensive coordinators would face difficult decisions every week. Double team one player and another receives favorable matchups. Focus protection on the edge and interior defenders gain opportunities. Try to stop both and coverage